The discussion today is about assistive technology and funding. But in the larger scheme of things, really, this conversation is about disability and investment. The idea here is when it comes to disability, there's a lot of conversation, and there's been a lot of conversation. For many years, this conversation has been advocacy, trying to raise the voice. And there's a time that comes when conversation has to be followed by concrete action. So to get us started, I'm going to start with Steve. Steve, you have 10 years experience, more than 10 years experience investing in Africa, both in the non-profit and for-profit sectors. You've been an angel investor, or you are an angel investor as well. And now you're into venture capital. What insights can you share about investing in emerging sectors, such as assistive tech? Because venture capital in Africa has been very active for more than a decade now. But it's only now that we've started raising the voice about, look, we have assistive technology and it's a market and it's investable. So please share with us.
So I must say, 12 months ago, I did not know there was such a thing as assistive technologies. So clearly the awareness and raising people's consciousness about it should be done. That's number one. In terms of investments, even just simply healthcare or related sector on the continent has been really left back. When you look at the amount of money that startups raise, let's say last year it was about $5 billion, only a paltry 3% went to healthcare. And of that, the quantity even for assistive technologies. And then when we look at the specific sector, what we would call deep tech, which is research on technologies that need either devices, hardware and or software, it's even lower. So it's true, there's a lack of knowledge and experience about the sector in Africa. But what I would say is that with initiatives like this one and more interest in the sector in Africa, in healthcare, we're in a very nice trend. So I think the way to answer your question, the way to drive more capital, more awareness, it's actually to create clusters. Meaning that with this type of event, people can co-create, collaborate, and really bring both public sector, private sector, to bring instruments, networks, to be able to drive the adoption.
I wanna push the gear forward a little bit, and I wanna come to Brian. And my question to Brian is, Brian, you are one of the frontier or pioneering entrepreneurs in Africa that is building a next-gen assistive technology, and you're not thinking about just Africa, you're thinking about solving a global problem. From what Steve has said, do you think everyone is pulling their weight in terms of creating this awareness? Do you think we are doing enough in the investing space, or we're dropping the ball? And what advice would you give to investors in the room about investing in assistive technology right now?
I still think there's a lot that can be done in terms of investing in assistive technologies in Africa. For context, Business Hope Tech started about 6.5 years ago here in Nairobi, and the vision that we have was we believe that every person deserves to live independently, and we focused on visually impaired people and just went to build a mobility assistive device for the visually impaired people. And over the last 6.5 years, we've launched versions of that and had so many learnings. And right now, our business has grown. We are in the UK, we are in Vienna in Austria, we have some presence in Australia, and also right here in Kenya. So I've sort of tried to understand the problem of mobility at a global level. And I think starting the business from Africa, there are many challenges, and the biggest challenge is always funding. And I feel assistive technologies are given unfair expectations, where you're expected to prove so much before you can get the first level funding. I think in my years I haven't found a fund or anyone willing to invest, and the initial investment is below $50,000 in a startup. Without, we need you to show us a product in the market, we need you to show us users, which is really not what is asked of startups in other fields. So I feel like there's a bit of investment needed in the early stages, and what the lack of investment in this stage, what that does is innovators are forced to go to market with a poor quality product, because you need you need revenue, you need to keep surviving. So you just go to market with what you can, and most of the time the business fails because you didn't invest enough in the product or in the user research, which all costs money. There's some great initiatives like Innovate Now, which is around giving knowledge and access to community for innovators in the early stages, which I think is a really good step, but we need to see more funding coming into the space.
So Steve, being an investor in Africa for quite a while, how do you think we might evolve, or what should be the mindset of investors coming into Africa, especially around assistive technology or investing in persons with disabilities? How do you think they need to approach this? Because for sure there are lessons to be learned, there are mistakes to be made, but is there anything we can do right now to shorten that learning curve?
Let me put it this way. As was said before, assistive technologies, medical technologies, generally speaking, need time, go-to-market, product design, product development, regulation, understanding of customer needs. We were talking about design earlier, human-centered design, right? That's the critical thing. And that takes time, patient capital. The biggest challenge we have on the continent is that there's not enough patient risk capital. So angel investors were non-existent about 10, 15 years ago. That are more of us. Venture capital, literally in Africa, officially or unofficially, is really 7 years old, really. People are doing things but really not venturing. So what I would say is that it's the right time to start looking at the ecosystem and developing public-private partnership or de-risking mechanisms to bring product to market. And one of the things I would particularly say is that it's mind-boggling the amount of innovations sitting within universities, engineering schools, etc. on the continent, Kenya included. And I strongly believe that there should be an opportunity to create public-private partnerships where all these innovations, technologies that are there can be supported through tech transfer offices, labs, fab labs, fabrication labs, and similar mechanisms where the innovation can have the time to be developed. It is true that we need more capital at the earlier stages to de-risk product development. But also what I would say is that in this particular context, again, it's co-creation, co-development, and really making sure that what products are developed, which products are developed, really have a market potential that is driven by human-centered design.
I want to bring this closer home to Brian, who has been through a process. Brian, was our first cohort at Innovate Now, and we are now in the 7th cohort. So from the eyes of a founder, seeing how we could do this in a much better way. And Steve mentioned something around co-creation, working together. So when GDI Hub launched 80-20-30, one of the key messages was around this idea that it's going to take partnerships to get these things done. And we actually approach this from the perspective of what does an inclusive innovation ecosystem look like? Meaning that when you say inclusive, all stakeholders involved have to feel like they are welcome and that they've got a role to play. But Brian, from where you sit, having been through an accelerator program, when it comes to this concept of investment, what could have made your journey easier? What could have shortened your time to launch? And how important do you think it is for anyone supporting innovation in one way or another, whether that's through training, mentorship, to think about how that company, how that product eventually is able to go to market?
I think my first investment was less than $500 US. So sometimes that's all it takes to get started. And from there, we went through several small fundraising rounds, a few pre-seed rounds, and now we're doing our seed round, our formal seed round from August of this year, around £2.4 million to launch our product later this year. But I feel like the landscape has really changed from when I started, where there wasn't any support network. Joined Innovate Now in 2019, and it was really interesting, especially to see. I describe GDI Hub as a research-centered organization coming to Africa, setting up a support system for innovators, which is really important because I got to learn a lot about our user-centered design, how to involve users in the development, basically at that early stage, which I think is critical. And I think most organizations are really changing from traditional sense of what they do into a more, I think, becoming more aware of realities. An example would be Access Austria. The organization, being a charity traditionally, is coming into the space and realizing the importance of investing in the early stage businesses and putting financial investment, putting physical infrastructure investment in businesses so that they can succeed. And I think once we see more early stage funding, I think that's the message, early stage funding for AT innovations.
Wow, thanks, Brian. So I want to close this, and I know it's never a good time to close a discussion as hot as this, but how we're going to do this is we're going to do a round fire of a personal statement from everyone on this panel, including myself. And the statement should be, what is your contribution going to be going forward to unlock this space? I'll begin with myself. So my commitment is that we have to go full circle and make sure that we create a link between support, whether that's mentorship, coaching, and education, to creating pathways for investment. And that's the only way the entrepreneurial story and the innovation story can actually be complete. We have to go all in, and it's time to actually turn on the turbo and go all in.
One, I urge everybody to go on jazarift.vc and apply. Any company that you know which is in assistive tech should apply to the website. And I commit to invest in 2 companies between now and the end of the year.
Wow, thank you, Brian.
Oh, wow. Our commitment as a company is always to deliver the best product for visually impaired people, the best mobility assistance device for visually impaired people, and we are committing to have pre-launch by the end of this year. This is a controlled launch for the Sixth Sense product, so watch out for that. And a personal commitment is to always help other AT innovators, and we're setting up some structures so that I can share the learning we've had as a company with other innovators coming up in the space.